Hey, Forward Church, I want to talk a little bit today about quarreling. Now, do you have somebody in your life who just loves a good fight, who can't resist an argument? Maybe that's you. And it could be in our everyday interactions with people. Maybe they're an internet troll. Maybe you're an internet troll where you just love getting in there and stirring up strife and stirring up quarrels and stirring up fights online. You see a post and it's got some controversy in it and it is like red meat to you and you just go after it. Well, I want to let you know that the Bible has some pretty strong words to say about this whole issue of being those who are argumentative and quarreling and stir up dissension among people. And let me read some verse to you from Titus chapter 3. Titus chapter 3, Paul writes to Titus, and he's given him some instructions on instructing the church. Titus is a pastor, and he's the one who is putting some elders in place in churches. And he says this to them. He says, "But avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, dissensions, and quarrels about the law, for they are unprofitable and worthless. And as for a person who stirs up division, after warning him once and then twice, have nothing more to do with him, knowing that such a person is warped and sinful. He is self-condemned." Now, those are like mic drop words. That is strong language. Listen, he says, if you are a quarrelsome person, if you are someone who ends up stirring up division, man, you are a person who is warped and sinful, and you stand self-condemned for the things that you're doing. God looks seriously upon this whole issue of quarreling, of fighting, of arguing, of causing needless division. And there's so much of this going on. And unfortunately, I see so much of it going on amongst Christians sometimes online, where we just get into fights and quarrels and arguments about things that don't matter. And there's two key words that I want to highlight here. He says, avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, dissensions, and quarrels about the law, for they are unprofitable and worthless. Those two words are so key here. Are there times where we need to be willing to pick a hill and die on it? For sure there are. There are truths that we have to be willing to go to bat for, but most things which we decide to go to war over are not those things. They're unprofitable and they're worthless. And one of the ways that we can determine this is my engaging in this argument, in this fight, is my need to post this article online, is this profitable or unprofitable to the cause of Christ? Does this bring worship and worthiness to Jesus, or does it turn people off of Jesus? Does it bring the body together around central truths, the church together, or does it split it apart over issues that are matters of opinion or matters of conscience, but not matters of utmost importance? And this is such a crucial issue that Paul actually writes to Timothy some pastoral instructions. He says, if somebody is a quarrelsome person, they should not be an elder. They should not be a leader in the church. There's no place for that amongst those who would seek to be those who would lead in the church of Christ. Does it help or hurt the cause of Christ? The next time that you go to post something online, that you go to post an article, that you go and go to engage with somebody in the comment section, I want you to ask yourself that question. Is it profitable? Is it worthwhile? Will this further the gospel? Will this push ahead the cause of Christ? And if you have a quarrelsome person in your life, listen to the instruction that Paul gives to Titus. He says, as for a person who stirs up division, after warning him once and then twice, have nothing more to do with him or her. That is, you can take a stab and pull them aside and say, hey, do you know what you're doing? Are you aware of how this is coming across? Are you aware of the disunity and dissension that you're causing? This doesn't seem to me to be furthering the cause of Christ. And it doesn't seem to be coming out in a way that reflects the heart of Christ. There's no grace, there's no compassion, there's no mercy, there's no love in the way that you are communicating. But if you run into a person who this is just their posture, you probably need to begin to tune that person out. Do not engage with them. You might need to stop following them on Twitter or Instagram, or shut it down so that you don't see their posts on Facebook, so that you don't get drawn into that division and that quarreling. And here's the thing. It's not ultimately about quarreling. The reason we quarrel is not just because we're wired to want to fight. The reason we quarrel is because we're wired to sin. We've got sin deep down in us. James says, what causes quarrels and what causes fights amongst you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? And I would actually say that so often what causes this is this underlying reality that we are not secure in the gospel. We are not secure in who we are in Christ. We are not secure in the justification that he has purchased for us. And so what we try and do is we try and argue and fight so that we can be right, because we're not sure of our righteousness in Christ. And so we have to be right. We have to prove ourselves smarter. We have to prove ourselves as morally superior, because we can't rest in the grace and goodness of God. And if that's you, I would encourage you to do some self-reflection, some introspection. What is it that just draws me into quarrels? And by the way, if you always find yourself in quarrels, it's probably because you're a quarrelsome person. See, the only common denominator between all the quarrels that you've ever found yourself in, all the arguments, all the broken relationships that you have found yourself in, is you. You're the common denominator, and that probably says there's something deep inside of you, an area where you are struggling to believe the gospel to be true, to believe that your righteousness, to believe that your justification, that you are justified through Jesus Christ. And so my hope for you is that you would find hope in the gospel, that you would find truth in the gospel, that it would sink down deep into your soul, so you would be secure in who you are in Christ and not feel the need to fight to prove your worth and prove your rightness and prove your superiority to others. But instead that you could rest in the one who is right, who is superior to all things, and who has chosen you and called you to be his own. And in that you would stop quarreling and you would focus your energies and your efforts on the things that are worthwhile and profitable, the things that move forward the cause of Christ. Let's be that type of people, Forward Church.